Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I am going to be reviewing the Colourpop Garden Variety Eyeshadow Palette. This is the only thing that I could pick up from the collection because when I was placing my order, literally everything else was sold out besides the palette. But I feel like the palette is always the main thing of the collection, so hopefully you guys will still find this review helpful. I'm just going to be talking about the palette, my thoughts on it. I'm going to go shade by shade, get down to the nitty gritty. I have live swatches, comparisons, and then 3 looks using the palette. So if you guys are curious about any of that, then please continue watching. So the Garden Variety collection is actually pretty big. There are some things that I do want to pick up and it's on my wish list once everything is back in stock. Specifically the lilac blush. When I saw that blush, I was so bummed out that it was sold out because that sort of blush is what I want Colourpop to do more of. I wish they came out with like a mustard blush when they did their sunflower collection. But this is what the palette looks like. I actually really love the packaging, and when you feel it, there's a little bumps on it, so it feels like the succulents are a little bit 3D in a way. And of course I am matching with the palette. First impression, I don't know, these days with any Colourpop palette, I'm not really so excited. I think they just have such a big selection of palettes, and I own a lot of them, that when they are constantly releasing new palettes in such a short period of time, I do feel very overwhelmed. And when I see the palettes, I'm not really that excited, but when I start playing around with the palette, I do feel excited playing with it, if that makes sense. So when I first saw the palette online, I wasn't really like, oh my gosh, I need this palette, it's so unique. But when I got it in person, first thing that I noticed is that the layout of this palette is really nice. I think this would be so good for a beginner because if you actually look at row by row vertically, you have like a trio of a color family. So if I was to cover the first row, you just see the neutrals. Second row has a little bit more green, purple, peach. I feel like the way it's set out is very approachable, really great for someone that is a beginner. And I think when it's laid out like this, it's more easier to create different color stories. And with this palette, you get a bunch of different color stories. I'll show you guys my looks here. The first look, I stuck to the peachy side. The second look, I stuck to the, gold and brown. And then the final look, which is the look that I'm currently wearing, I stuck to the purple and green. So you can see the variation with this palette. There's so many color stories that I wanted to do with this palette because the way it's laid out, it makes it so easy to come up with different color stories in my opinion. And also when I was finding my comparisons, I had to go into so many different palettes to find these comparisons. So although there might be a lot of comparisons, there's not a palette that has all of these sort of shades in the same palette, if you know what I mean. There's not really a strong color story. It sort of dives into different color families. And then another thing that I noticed when I was finding my comparisons is that when I was playing with these shadows, I was like, this shadow reminds me of this shadow from this palette, and I had that thought a lot. But once I was finding my comparisons, I found that it goes 2 ways. One, it's either the shadow is very almost dupeable and very comparable to a lot of their other shadows, or it's very, very unique and there's nothing in Colourpop's collection that looks like it. It's just this way or that way. There's nothing like in between. So it's either very unique or something we have seen before. So I don't really know how you want to take that in. I think as Colourpop releases more palettes, I find it more difficult to recommend palettes because I already own so many. I don't know if it's really necessary. If you were on the fence about this palette and you weren't sure, I personally feel like it is a really nice palette. I really, really like the looks that I created. I think some of the undertones and the shades were something really, really special, but it's not a palette that I'm going to use every single day, if I'm being honest. It's not going to be a holy grail palette of mine, but it's a palette that I know I will continue using because there are some really special shades in here that I don't have in my collection. So hopefully that all made sense. I'm now gonna go into shade by shade live swatches, and hopefully this part can help you guys out a little bit more and really see the colors close up and my personal opinion on each shadow. So let's roll up the sleeve and let's get talking and swatching. So the first shade in the palette is called Deserted. This is, to me, like a matte white, but it has sort of like a creamy yellow undertone. And when I was trying to find my comparisons, there are a lot of these sort of matte whites, and I thought I could find a comparison really easy, but a lot of the matte whites that Colourpop already has either pulls too creamy or too yellow. But of course, once it's on the eyes, it's going to look really similar similar, but if you want to get down to the nitty-gritty details, then there is a difference. Then we have Herbivore. This is a satin shadow, so I would describe this to be like a light creamy yellow, and it has little gold reflex in there, and you will see these glitter reflex when you apply the shadow on your eyes. Sometimes with these satin shadows, they are more satin. Some of them, they have these glitters in it, but once you buff it onto your eyes, they disappear. And now some of them, when you apply it to your eyes, they do appear. So there is a difference between their satin shadows, and this one you will be able to see the glitters. The next shade we have is called Synergy. This is a really pretty lilac purple shade. It has sort of like almost like a duochrome, I feel. The next shadow we have is called Wavelength, and I would describe this shadow to be a yellow gold, but it has sort of like a silver white flip to it. But I do feel like there are some comparable shades in Colourpop's collection, but nonetheless it's still a really beautiful highlighting shade. Now I have Prickly Please. I would describe this to be a very light peachy pink. This is a really nice transition slash base color, and although Colourpop does have a good variation of peaches, some of them have an orange undertone, some of them have a pink undertone. So these are the ones that I found that were most comparable. But I think the undertone might be slightly different, but you can see how they compare. Next we have Third Eye, and Third Eye was a shadow that really stood out to me. I felt like it was just super unique. It's sort of like a yellow gold, but it has sort of like a lime flip to it as well. I think the most similar shadow that I could find was from the Pretty Guardian palette, but I think that palette is in high demand, and that is a really limited palette as well. Another shadow that stood out to me is Best Buds. I think everybody's attention is going to go to this shadow when you look at this palette first, and I do think this green is also really special as well. A lot of the greens that Colourpop has, they pull more like to the turquoise blue side. Nothing is very this limey and true green, so I do think this one is quite special. Next shadow is called Smudge Off, and I would describe this to be like a metallic sort of berry purple raspberry sort of shade. It has tones of purple, tones of pink, so it like sort of just meets in the middle with those colors. I do have a couple of similar shadows to share, but the ones that I did swatch have a stronger purple undertone, and this one has a little bit more of that pink undertone. So these are the ones that I could find that were most similar, and of course you guys, really once it's on the eyes, they're gonna look the same. I'm just being really detailed about how these shadows are right now. Then we have Don't Leave. This is the Super Shock shadow in the palette, and this is a really nice orangey peachy color. It has little specks of pink reflex in there, so very flattering on a golden undertone, I feel, any undertone really. These are the comparisons that I could find. They do have a similar undertone, but none of these are a Super Shock formulation. These are metallic formulation, so there's a difference in formulation. Then we have Overbloom. This is also another satin shadow, but I find that the glitters disappear once you start blending this onto your eye. I would describe this to be like a muted peach with a pink undertone. I couldn't find one that was so similar, since a lot of them had more of like an orange peach undertone, and this one definitely has more of like a pinkier undertone. Next up we have Stay Sharp. This was a shadow that I was quite surprised by, because in the pan it just looks like a really warm medium brown, like a chestnut brown. It's really warm, but it has sort of like a mustardy undertone, and I feel like that is quite unique and something that I don't have. Now we have Sucker For You. This one again is another satin shadow, has a lot of those glitters in it. I do have a couple of comparisons here, and I feel like they do give off a very similar vibe. Next up I have is Stuck On You. I did talk about this shadow earlier. In the pan it does look like just a medium brown, but I feel like once you start working this onto your eyes, it is more of like a deeper purple, and I definitely would consider this to be a darker shadow. And like I said before, this shadow works so amazingly. I was really surprised. A lot of deep purples can be very patchy, and this one was not at all. And as you can see, some of the comparisons that I have here from discontinued palettes or really old palettes, so that might be something you want to keep in mind. Next up we have Clay Day. I would describe Clay Day to be like a muted, dusty, warm pinky peach. I think this is a really pretty shadow. This is sort of the muted shadows that I really like to play with. It has a lot of silver reflex, and honestly I would have loved the shadow if it didn't have those glitters in it. And the last shadow in the palette is called Root 'em Up. Now this shadow is very, very unique, you guys. I would describe this to be like a deep mustard green brown. That is such a weird description. I described 3 different colors in that, but I really do think this is such a special shade. The only comparison I could find was from the Just My Luck palette, but I don't think that one is as dark as Root 'Em Up, so I find this one to be really unique. Really couldn't find anything as close to this from Colourpop. And here are all 15 shadows swatched. As you could tell from my description, I found some of them to be very unique and really pleasing to use, and then some other ones, you know, I already have a lot of, or some didn't catch my eye. So I think it's a good mixture of unique shades and standard shades to use those unique shades with. But yeah, you guys, that is pretty much my review, my swatches, and my comparisons. We now can move into the 3 looks. To get started with the first look, I'm going to start off with the shade Prickly Please, and this is going to be our transition shadow slash base color. So I'm just going to sweep that into my crease using windshield wiping motions to get this blended out. I think this is a really nice peachy pink transition shadow because on my skin tone, I feel like it's the perfect tone. Not too light where you can't even see it, and it's not too dark where it's too hard to blend out. So it's the perfect tone. I'm then going to go into the shade Over the Bloom, and I'm going to start packing this on to my lid space. I'm just going to stamp that on at my lid, and then I'll slowly start blending that up into the crease and into the transition shadow. We just want a soft gradient effect. We don't want the shadow to overtake the previous transition shadow. I also take the shadow onto my lower lash line as well. I'm just going to sweep that from the outer corner right to the inner corner. And then I'm taking the shade Don't Leave, and I'm gonna first use my fingers to apply this on at the center of my lid. This is a Super Shock shadow, and I just find that using my finger with a Super Shock works out much better. So I'm just going to dab that on with my finger first, and then I'll go in with a brush to maneuver the shadow. I did see that this specific shadow does sort of take off the product a little bit underneath. You can sort of see it like lifting up the eyeshadow. It's not too noticeable. I think you can only see if you're very close, but I also take this onto my lower lash line as well, right at the center of the lash, just aligning that with the shadow on our lids. Now I am taking the shade Root 'Em Up, and I'm going to use this on a defining brush to create my smoky wing. I first like to focus the product at the outer third of my eyes, then I'll work my way in, and then I'll slowly work on my wing. I just like a smoky wing, and especially when the look looks like this, where it's a little bit more lighter, more on the softer side, I like using a dark brown. However, I do go in with my black liquid liner just to line like my lash line like very thinly, and then I go in with a black eyeshadow to sort of smudge that out, just because my lashes that I'm using today are on a black lash band and I just need a darker lash line, so that's why I did that. But of course that's always optional if you're not wearing lashes, or if you don't mind that, that's up to you. I just personally had to give my lash line a little bit more darkness. But I'm going to curl my lashes and apply mascara. And then for the false lashes I'm wearing today, these ones are from Petite Cosmetics. These are their 3D Luxe lashes, and I'm wearing the style Muse. But I'm also going to be taking the Petite Cosmetics lower lashes in the style Allure, and I just cut them up and I applied a couple to the center of my lower lash line just to sort of enhance that halo effect. And I think putting these lower lashes on at the center gives more like a cutesy vibe. And then another optional step that I did, I just took this little pearl, I just popped that on at the center underneath those fake lower lashes. And this, you guys, is the first look completed. We ended up with a super girly, peachy, monochromatic look. I played around with the false lashes and did a sort of different eye style, and I really like it. I feel like it does tie in with the peachiness and makes the look a little bit more girly. I'm going to leave all of the other product info that I used on my face and my lips in the description box because I use a mixture of a lot of things. So I'll just leave that in the description box. But I hope you guys like this first look. Now moving into the second look, I'm gonna start off with the shade Herbivore, and this is going to be our transition shadow. So this is a satin shadow, and you are going to see those little glitters sparkle through, so it's not going to be like a complete matte. So if you want to do your eyes first, then that's an option because you will get a little bit of fallout with this shadow. But I'm just going to sweep that into my crease using windshield wiping motions. This is going to be the initial base color, so that way all of the other shadows that go on top can blend out really easily. I'm then going into the shade Stay Sharp, and I'm gonna start working this at the outer third of my eyes first. I'm just gonna work in the product there because that's where I want the most pigmentation to be. And then once I feel like most of the product has left my brush, I will slowly start blending that into the inner third of my lid space. I also run the shadow on my lower lash line as well, but you can see I focus the product at the outer third, and then I'll bring the remaining product in towards the inner third of my eyes. I want the outer corners to be really dark. It's going to give us this like rounded eye shape that I really like. So just focusing the most pigmentation at the outer corners is going to help achieve that look. Now I'm going into the shade Rhythm Up, and I'm going to be doing exactly the same thing, just focusing this at the outer third. But you can see I'm focusing it a little bit lower, and this shade is really pigmented. I only dipped my brush in like a couple times. I didn't have to re-dip. I just worked with what I had because it's super pigmented. It goes a long way. So when I first add this on at the outer third, I'm gonna slowly start blending that out and making it diffuse into the other colors. And once again, I also take this onto my lower lash line as well, but I'm taking it on a defining brush, and I'm only going to focus it at the outer third. Now taking the shade Third Eye, I'm going to place this at the inner third of my eyes. I'm going to diffuse this out and blow it out above my crease. I really just want the shadow to be blown out, so I do take it quite high up. I take it past my crease as well. I'm not going to use the shadow wet. You definitely could, but I feel like using it wet is going to make it a little bit more foiled, and I sort of want something that's a little bit more diffused. Now I'm going to go into the shade Wavelength, and I'm going to use the shadow to highlight my inner corners. It sort of meshes really well into the shade Third Eye. I feel like they have that sort of lime yellow gold undertone, so it's just going to really enhance our inner corners and blend really well into the metallic shadow as well. I take a little bit onto my lower lash line, just a teeny tiny at the inner third of my eyes. And now I'm just taking my black liquid liner. I'm just going to use this to align my lash line and also create a wing. I will go in with a black eyeshadow just to smoke out my wing to make it sharper, longer, and more defined. Now just curling my lashes and applying mascara. I'm gonna pop on my false lashes. These ones are from Petite Cosmetics in the style Honey, my favorite lashes ever. And this, you guys, is the second look completed. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really liked how this turned out. I wasn't expecting to like it so much, but that yellow lime gold is so special, and I feel like it just really flatters the contact lenses I'm wearing, these brown lenses. I don't know, I just love how this look turned out. So hopefully you guys love the second look as well. And now onto the final look. I'm going to start off with the shade Clay Day, and this is going to be our transition shadow slash base color. So I'm just going to work that into my crease using windshield wiping motions. It's going to go all over our lids as well. I'm going to blend that up towards the brow bone, towards the outer corners, really just blowing and diffusing this shadow out. I also take the shadow onto my lower lash line as well, but as you can see, I do focus most of the product at the outer corner, and then I'll bring whatever's left on my brush towards the inner third. Next, I'm going to go into the shade Stuck On You, and I'm going to use this shadow to deepen out the outer corners. I didn't really expect this shadow to be so dark because I feel like in the pan, it looks more of like a medium purple, but once you like pack this on, it's like a really deep purple, and I love that. And it wasn't patchy whatsoever, which is really special because I feel like a lot of matte purples can be a little bit patchy, but this one was really easy to work with, and I feel like it's super pigmented, very dark, and it really does complement our transition shadow as well. But I'm just going to use circular motions at my outer corners to get that blended out, and then I'll take a defining brush to focus this on my lower lash line, but only at the outer third. And now I'm taking the shade Smudge off, and I'm just going to place that right next to Stuck On You. Right next door. I'm not going to take up too much space. I really just want it to be next to it, just to enhance more of those purple shadows. And I'm just using this shadow dry on my brush, and I feel like it does give like a glittery metallic effect. Then I'm going to take Synergy, and I'm going to place that right next to Smudge off. As you can see, we're working in a slow sort of gradient, but this is going to be sort of the highlight shade. It is going to be the lightest metallic that we're placing on, so it's going to give our eyes a little bit more dimension, and I think it blends really well into Smudge off as well. And then taking Best Buds, I'm going to place this at the inner third of my eyes. I'm also going to take that into my inner corners as well to highlight that area, but I go back and forth with my brushes just to get the metallic shadows all like infused with each other. I don't want like 3 different metallic shadows on my eyes, like where you can see they start and stop. I want them to blend into each other, so just going back and forth with your brushes is going to help get that blend. And I feel like the combination of the green and the purple, it's a really nice combo. But to finish off the eye look, I'm gonna go ahead and take my black liquid liner. You guys know the drill. I'm gonna go in with a black eyeshadow to smudge and define that liner out. Then just curling my lashes, applying mascara, and I'm gonna pop on my falsies. These ones are from Petite Cosmetics. It's their 3D Luxe Lashes in the style Birdie. And this, you guys, is the final look completed. I hope you guys enjoyed this final look. I don't do this color combination often, so it's a nice sort of change for a colorful eye look. And I really do like the green and purple together. I think it's really fun, and it does sort of represent the palette really well as well. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this final look. And those, you guys, were my 3 looks. Let me know down below which look out of the 3 was your favorite down below. I'd love to hear your feedback. I honestly loved all of them. I feel like they all gave a different vibe. It just depends what you're going for. If you guys did find this review helpful, please give this video a thumbs up. It would help me out so much. It helps with the algorithm as well. So please give it a thumbs up if you guys did enjoy this video. And I just want to thank you guys so much for watching as always. I try my best to reply to everything as well. So I see you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't yet, subscribe, join the family. It's all good vibes around here. But yeah, with that being said, thank you so much for watching again. I love you guys, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!